Ladies and gentlemen, we move swiftly to our next special session. The theme is very fittingly women and children. In our first special session, we will examine the progress that has been made since the landmark 4th World Conference on Women and the persistent gender disparities that continue to challenge sustainable development. Together, we will explore in this session where we stand today, and how we can accelerate processes.
We're delighted to welcome a diverse panel that brings unique insights on the divides faced by women and children. First, I am deeply honored to introduce Kyung-ha Kang, a distinguished professor at the Institute of Global Engagement and Empowerment at Yonsei University, the president and CEO of the Asia Society, and former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, who joins us live today to speak about the gender divide, 30 years after the 4th World Conference on Women. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished professor, Kyung-ha Kang. Professor Kang?
Yes. Good morning and good evening here in New York. I'm truly grateful and delighted to be given this opportunity to address the participants at GEEF 2025. And this is certainly a call for action to bridge the divides for a sustainable future. Thank you, President Yoon. Thank you, SG Pan, for your continued leadership. And it's wonderful to see some distinguished speakers, although on video by Zoom, and in particular, my very good friend and a hero to all survivors of sexual violence and armed conflict, Dr. Dennis Mukwege. His Panzi Hospital, his city Bukavu, his region Eastern Congo is undergoing an acute crisis, as he says, renewed violence instigated by outside military forces. And I had the honor to visit his hospital 3 times. And of course, every time you go back, you hope it will be better, that the situation surrounding the hospital, which is actually a sanctuary among terrible violence, that the situation will improve. In fact, over the years, I am afraid the situation has only deteriorated. So my heartfelt solidarity with Dr. Mukwege and the wonderful staff at the hospital as they continue to do the work of treating these terrible the victims of these terrible violences that continue to happen in Eastern Congo. All the speakers before me have been very eloquent, comprehensive, and really spelled out the challenges facing us as we try to do the hard push towards the SDGs. So I will be very brief. And all the divides that are keeping from reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, I will focus just on the gender divide. And this divide seems to be deepening amidst the reverses in hard-won gains in women's rights and gender equality over the past decades. As the moderator notes, this is the 30th anniversary of the 4th UN World Conference on Women, which was held in Beijing in 1995. And at the time, 30 years ago, I was just one of hundreds of Korean women NGOs taking part in the NGO forum in Huairou, which was about an hour's drive away from the intergovernmental meeting being held in Beijing. And it was such a truly life-changing experience for me to be there, to realize that the daily issues of discrimination that I struggle with every day were in fact high on the UN's agenda. To be able to exchange views and ideas and find solidarity with women activists and thought leaders from all around the world, and to rejoice together. The tens of thousands of government and NGO leaders gather there when the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, BDPA, was adopted by consensus. And the BDPA continues to be our guide for women's empowerment, women's rights, and gender equality. And at the time, in 1995, we all thought the world was never going to be the same, that with prompt implementation of the BDPA, women and girls all around the world would be empowered and liberated from discrimination and violence and genuine gender equality would become reality. Of course, although at different speeds and having to overcome entrenched barriers in our societies. 10 years later, in 2005, I was by then a diplomat for the South Korean government and chairing the UN Commission on the Status of Women, which is the UN intergovernmental body that tracks implementation of the BDPA. So we looked back on the 10 years since Beijing, and it was so clear that progress was hardly sufficient, to put it mildly. And indeed, some governments were unwilling to recommit themselves to the promises of the BDPA. But after much outreach to those governments during the lead up to the Commission session, and I must say very crafty diplomacy during the session, we were able to reaffirm the BDPA in its entirety. But it was very clear that contrary to our rather naive expectations in 1995, all the promises of Beijing were going to take a long, long time to realize. That the struggle for gender equality was in fact a civilizational endeavor, which would see ups and downs, 2 steps forward, and a step or even many steps backward as it unfolded. That realization hadn't changed at the 20th anniversary of Beijing and the adoption of the SDGs in 2015, at the 25th anniversary in 2020, and it still remains the same civilizational struggle today at Beijing +30. Certainly, progress has been achieved, albeit slowly. Many countries have enacted laws to combat gender-based violence and workplace discrimination, and to ensure equal access to education. Social protection systems and care services have improved maternal health and education opportunities for girls. Gender gaps in primary and secondary education have greatly narrowed globally. But the challenges are persistent and numerous. And in most countries, women remain hugely underrepresented in top political, economic, and corporate leadership positions, facing structural barriers and gender-based violence. Women are disproportionately represented in informal, low-paid work and carry the burden of unpaid care work. And this is aggravated by the digital gender divide. And current international financial structures are all ill-equipped to address the unique challenges women and girls face, especially during crises. Misogyny, violence against women's rights defenders, and the rollback of gender-sensitive policies threaten hard-won gains. Climate change, conflicts, and economic instability disproportionately affect women and girls, and this deepens their vulnerabilities. Women, especially in low-income and conflict-affected countries, continue to face barriers to essential healthcare and other life-saving services. And the actions recommended to overcome these challenges are also very long-standing and numerous. For example, eliminate discriminatory laws and enforce protection against all forms of gender-based violence. Ensure women's full and equal participation at all levels of governance and decision-making. Invest in gender-responsive healthcare systems. Ensure women's participation and leadership in peace processes to end conflicts. Integrate care work into formal labor structures to combat poverty and promote women's economic empowerment. Equip women and girls with the skills, access, and resources needed to thrive in a digital economy. And design gender-responsive budgeting and ensure financial institutions prioritize gender equality, and so forth. In fact, these are some of the points expected to be included in the outcome of the CSW that is taking place in New York this week and next. And governments must take them seriously, not just as words on paper, but as real action points. I know that there is huge disagreements among governments over some of the language in the draft resolution that is being negotiated at the CSW session, so it's not certain what the final outcome will be. But that should not detract us from the fact. And the fact is that real change for women and girls, for gender equality, happens on the ground, in countries where policies, laws, cultures, mindsets are at play. And most important is the political will of the leaders who set the direction for governments. Indeed, none of the recommendations from the CSW can be effectively implemented nor have lasting impact without the sustained political will of decision makers and actors, both women and men. And this will has to be firmly rooted in the belief in the equal rights and freedoms and the fundamental dignity of all human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, in this day and age of fragmented information environments and parallel universes, cyber attacks, and hostility and hatred penetrating our daily discourse, this belief in our shared humanity has become even harder to nurture and preserve. Furthermore, with big power rivalry heightening tension in the global order, it has become too easy to ignore or lose sight of the humanity of the people on the other side, whether inside or between countries. But this is all the more the reason to advance the gender equality agenda as an inclusive endeavor that embraces all of humanity, with each and every one of us doing our very best, our utmost in our immediate local contexts. Distinguished participants, GEEF 2025 convenes at a critical time for the world when geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamics seem to be fundamentally changing. Clearly, we are not here to tackle these global dynamics, but we must remember that gender equality is not only a goal in itself, but is also a fundamental prerequisite for peaceful and prosperous societies. So by recommitting ourselves to the global solidarity and aspiration towards sustainable development and seeking practical solutions in the many sessions scheduled over the next 2 days, I do hope that we will be strengthening the forces for gender equality and shared humanity around the world. I wish you all very productive and inspiring discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kang, for this invigorating lessons of what can we actually do on overcoming the gender divide. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Han, a climate activist affiliated with the Eco-Sophia Lab and student from Yeonjung Middle School, who is advocating for children's rights and, of course, also youth for this beautiful country. Give a warm welcome, please, to Ms. Han.
Good morning. I am a first grade student at Yeonjung Middle School. My name is Han. I am a co-plaintiff of baby climate lawsuit, and also I am a climate activist. I wasn't a climate activist from the very beginning, but I was just part of this member of this world where we are dealing with a climate change. And also, I participated in the closing argument at the Constitutional Court hearing. There, I've had a first-hand witness to the decision by the court. And I am just a regular 13-year-old girl student. My favorite time of the day is the break time where I can enjoy snacks with my friends. But that doesn't mean that the climate change can pause, can take a break. For example, In some countries, some children became orphans because they lost their parents to severe flooding. And also, I became worried that I might not be able to have a chance to make my dream come true because of climate change. And many people call me the future generation, but due to the climate change, I'm not quite sure if we are going to have a really future. I didn't study about climate change. I had a first-hand experience of climate change. This drawing is my own self-portrait. Here, I wanted to convey the moment where I experienced climate change directly. So sometimes I would hold a picket to protest with my mom, and I marched along with my friends. And also, I would collect plastic bottle caps as a part of our climate actions. But I'm not sure if the current laws and policies can protect my future against the climate change. So with that realization, I decided to take action. That is how I became a climate activist. I stood in the Constitutional Court in Korea, and I also spoke out about the lack of sufficient efforts by the older generation to protect us from the climate change. In 2020, I was 8 years old, and there were other adolescents who got involved in climate actions. And my mom actually told me about these youth activities. And there were many lawyers who fought against climate change. And there were many other citizens who upheld our pickets on the street. So there were many people who inspired me to be who I am today. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today. But I also have a cousin who's younger than me. When that cousin becomes as old as I am, the fact that my cousin will live in a world with a worsened climate change, it just doesn't sit well with me. And also, I learned a lot through the lawsuit. The climate change is not a task given to a particular generation. The past and the present, generations from the past and the present are all interconnected with each other. When we talk about the climate change, we tend to look for the perfect solution. And also, we have to think about whether when we are concerned about the climate change, we have to look back on our own actions. For example, some people demand that if I am to work as a climate activist, I also have to have a perfect lifestyle. For example, no disposable cups or no actions that can hamper the response to the climate change. But climate change cannot be solved by a single person living a spotless life. Already, a lot of green gas have been emitted into the atmosphere, and many existing policies and laws are already impacting the climate. So when I talk about climate change, many adults, they just criticize me. You're too young to concern yourself with this kind of topic, and your own actions are not perfect. So I often get criticized. And sometimes when I go on a TV show, just because I was reading my prepared remarks, I would be criticized for that. But what matters is that this issue of climate change, it cannot be solved by a single person's effort. We need to work together. And what it takes is not just a few talented people working together, but it takes really collective efforts from everyone. And I feel insecure about my own future because of the climate change. And I am afraid that my options for my future will dwindle due to the climate change. So why why am I working as a climate activist? It's because I want to protect my own life. And all the other climate activists, they're actually just regular citizens who just want to stand up for their life and just want to protect their life. That is also why I participated in the baby climate lawsuit. And our effort led to the ruling by the Constitutional Court in Korea. But again, legal ruling is not going to solve the climate change. The real change comes from regular citizens, not just limited to climate activist actions. Real change can come from regular citizens' united efforts. We often say that the future is still distant from us, but the future is already here. We are already experiencing the climate change, the climate crisis, and that is a part of our future. So when did the future begin? And to whom does this future belong? And how can we forge our future together? And what kind of future do we want for ourselves? Finding answers to these questions, that is what we need to do here today. We are living in an interconnected world, so we need to recognize each other and work together. Children, the youth, and the grown-ups, when we all work together, we can deal with the climate change and we can build a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Han. We sincerely appreciate your inspiring words and dedication to this cause. I'm personally very proud to see our next generation already in action, trying to make a difference. Ms. Han will also be participating in a panel session later this afternoon. So for those of you interested, please attend the session as well. Thank you once again. 감사합니다. Finally, it is my pleasure to invite to the stage Ms. Jin-hee Park, an accomplished actor, dedicated eco-activist, and proud alumna of our graduate school. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Jin-hee Park to the stage.
Good morning, distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Park Jin-hee, actor and eco-activist. I am very delighted to be able to invite you to join us at the GEEF 2025. This is a meaningful opportunity because this is a forum where various global leaders and experts gather together to find solutions for a sustainable future and share ideas on the environmental problems facing humanity. Earth is our only home, and this is the only planet on which humanity will live. The Earth is a precious space that contains everything that humanity knows, and this is where the history and the future of our humanity are intertwined. However, as we all know, the Earth is undergoing dramatic changes due to global warming, which is threatening the survival of humankind. In recent years, I have witnessed severe natural disasters caused by climate change in many parts of the world. I saw how green forests burned to ashes by wildfires, how glaciers were crumbling, and I was able to see how neighbors whose survival was threatened by severe drought. The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the land we live on are changing. The climate crisis is a reality that is becoming more and more acute even as we gather today here. So the more I think about this sad and desperate reality, the more I feel afraid and insecure, especially when I think about the future of my 2 children. I sometimes feel devastated. But in the end, instead of dwelling on fear, I know that I must be the beginning of a change. As an adult who has enjoyed a clean earth but has not fulfilled his responsibilities, and as a human being who has made the earth difficult, and most of all, as a mother who loves my 2 children as well as other children around the world who are the future of our humanity. So I know that I must be the beginning of a change. But change does not start with grand statements or declarations, but every cup we use, every energy we consume, and every eco-friendly lifestyle that we choose to have will determine the future of our planet. And the more small actions we take and the more diverse opinions we have, the more powerful the message will become and the more people it will resonate. And I hope that GEEF 2025 will resonate even more and show more people the possibility of change. No one knows what we do and what we strive for and how our actions will lead to changes. So there's a lot that is unknown. However, it is clear that if we don't do anything, we cannot expect any change at all. I would like to invite you to join us on our journey towards a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Park, for sharing your thoughts with us.